Okay, welcome to the MARGHADARSHAN series of previous year questions of PSIR. So today two questions were given. So the question number 1 was the relative autonomous model of state, and they are asking you to comment. So the question is pretty straightforward. So one thing is that they are asking you to write about what? Relative autonomous model, but they are not just asking what is relative autonomous, they are asking you to comment on it. So obviously here your introduction will be saying that where this model of state is reflected. So you can say within Marxism there are two major perspectives of state. One is the instrumentalist perspective, the other is the structural perspective. So under the structural perspective you have the relative autonomous model, which originally was there in Marx's the 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte, where he had spoken about the French society, where under certain conditions the state will not come under the control of one class, especially when there are multiple competing classes existing, and state's function will be relatively autonomous. And you can say, however, he says that it is not completely autonomous, he says it is relatively autonomous because at end of the day the state will work in favor of the bourgeois when their position is threatened, means they will collectively come together to protect their interest. The same idea has been also reflected in writings of Nikos Polans, where he says with the emergence of modern day democracy and universal adult franchise, now the state cannot function in the interest of only one class because they will also have to reach out to the working class, etc. So the state appears to be relatively autonomous, but again here the state end of the day will protect the interest. But however, this idea has been critiqued by Ralph Miliband, who is a proponent of instrumentalist perspective, who believes that state always remains as an instrument of the bourgeois or the haves. But we can say the idea of relative autonomous has been also reflected, in conclusion you can write, in post-colonial scholars like the Marxist scholar Hamza Alvi, in his concept of overdeveloped state with respect to Pakistan, where he said here also the state is relatively autonomous, in that sense it is controlled by the metropolitan bourgeois, the military as well as the feudal class. So it's a short question. Your main demand should be is that explaining what is relative autonomous model, but in your answer you have to focus on why it is relatively autonomous, it is not completely autonomous, because end of the day the state will function in the favor of the capitalist class. Mention about Nikos Polans, bring Ralph Miliband in your view, and just summarize that. Don't go into detailed explanation because this question has been asked only for 10 marks, 150 words. The second question they've asked is about critically analyze this Kautilya's Saptanga theory of state. So the other thing you have to analyze here is that they are not only asking what is Saptanga theory of state, they are asking you to analyze the idea. So obviously first half of your answer you have to explain the Saptanga theory of state. So obviously go with introduction, saying that Kautilya is one of the scholars who represent the realist traditions, and his book Arthashastra has been seen as largely a very important book on what political economy, and it has been also considered to be one of the best books written on statecraft. Okay. So then you go into explaining the idea of Saptanga theory. So you can also make use of a diagram. So you can say Nabi, that is the king, which is central to the Saptanga theory. Then go on briefly explaining the different elements. So one is Amatya, that is the minister. Then you have Kosha, that is treasury. Then you have Durga, that is the fort. Then you have Mitra, that is the ally. Then you have Janapada. Anything else you have left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and Bala, that is the army. And now you go on to explain. Kautilya gave an organic theory of state, and Kautilya believed that king alone cannot run the state. The king is the main part of the chariot, but also you need other parts of the chariot to function well. That is the minister, that is the army, etc. And even today, in present times, when we look at the most powerful states in the world, are those states which have strong leadership, who have strong ministers, advisors, and powerful armies in the world. But however, some elements might have now lost relevance in present times. For example, today we can say that the army, what Kautilya had spoken about, the techniques of war today has slightly changed. Today technology has become one of the important element of the state in that regard. The third aspect is that he had also, when he brought the idea of Saptanga, it was a monarchical system what he spoke about. But today's world we are seeing more of a democratic system, but again in democratic system the prime minister, he plays a very key aspect of the role. So then you can conclude your answer by saying that, as we can say Shiv Shankar Menon, who has once said that Kautilya's Arthashastra was not only relevant to his times, it is also relevant to our times, because the world which we live in is not very different from the world in which Kautilya lived. So here your answer should not only explain the 7 organs in detail in that regard, give a brief description about what is Saptanga and why he told these are 7 important limbs of the state, but at the same time also try to bring the relevance of his idea in today's world, but also try to show that how today's world is different from Kautilya. For example, when he gave the idea, it was a monarchical state what he spoke about, but today we are living in a democratic state. And during his time, when he spoke about the army strength in the regard, the technological forces which are there was different from today what we have employed. And third one you can say, but nevertheless many important elements are also important today. For example, today also geopolitics plays a very key role in that regard. Even today you can say leadership is a very important component of a power of a state. And today we can say advisors concerning the prime minister, etc., they also play a very key role in today's politics. Hence that is why you can say Shiv Shankar Menon said that what the Kautilya's Arthashastra is very relevant even today. Why? Because the world which we live in today is not very different from in which Kautilya lived. So these are the 2 questions for today's. So that's why I told every day we are posting 2 questions in morning. So you can write your answer and make a comparison that how can write. See, detail of the content can vary. It's not that everybody can have the same content, but the structure and the approach, that should be somewhat similar. Okay. And that's why I said, see, in UPSC one thing is simple, to score more, right? So nobody will give you marks for speaking well. Marks will be given for writing well. So that's what we say, unless you write more, you can't see any kind of improvement. And some people might be gifted in writing, like some people naturally will have that thing, but for many others they'll have to develop that approach. Okay. So that's why we say read less and write more. And write more, please think more. If you think more, then you will be able to write. If you just read and just try to bring, that won't happen. So again, we'll meet with 2 questions tomorrow.